And we're back with more of the Shacknews Awards 2023. You know, we like to talk about music. We like to talk about all sorts of components of games, but sound design is also very important in video game design. So here we are. We're going to declare a winner of the best sound design of the year 2023 here at the Shacknews Awards. So let me get the nominees out and then we'll get to talking about them. Marvel's Spider-Man 2 for the PlayStation 5. Super Mario Bros. Wonder for Nintendo Switch. Alan Wake 2. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom for Nintendo Switch. Starfield, which is on Game Pass, right? And Darkest Dungeon 2. Those are the nominees. Let's get into it. I reviewed Super Mario Bros. Wonder this year. Gave it a 10 out of 10. I had nothing bad to say about it at all. And I mentioned in the review, they took a lot of risks at Nintendo. So it was very publicly announced that Charles Martinet was not going to be the voice of Mario going forward. But sound in Mario Wonder goes far beyond voice acting. The sound of the coins being picked up, the sound of jumping, a lot of these things were redesigned for this game, where it harkens back to older 2D Mario games like Super Mario Bros. 3 and Super Mario World in a lot of respects. So I would say go back and like listen to the jumping sound or listen to the power up noises, the throwing of the fireball, shooting water out your nose as an elephant.
The
There's just a
drill
lot
cap,
of
just
the drill
breaking stuff
cap
with the
has
drill
a
cap.
great noise when you go
I love
through the
that.
ceiling, and when you're moving, there's that like crunchy noise.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's an outstanding game with amazing audio design, uh, and it all of it is new. There's a sense of there's a feel of newness to that game that franchise desperately needed in 2D. Uh, and I'll talk about this more on the music side for sure, but Mario Wonder's soundtrack is full of bangers, and
Yes.
it's not just in levels; it's the overworlds, right? Like the music in the overworlds are excellent. When you're talking to a poplin in their shop, that's excellent. Yeah, very very good sound design, very good music design, amazing art direction. There's a lot of reasons to like Mario Wonder, but a very worthy nominee in this category. I think Nintendo has some of the best sound designers on the planet, and just the way that they think about sound over there and how it affects game design and level design, I think is just super unique. I see you nodding, David.
Yeah, it's just like they know that it's intrinsic to the experience. It's part of the audio visual and tactile feedback. Like if the coin pickup sound were any different, you'd feel like something was off, even if you couldn't articulate it. And they just are really their attention to detail and sound design has impressed me all the way since the first Mario Brothers. Like those sounds, they still use a lot of them because they're that iconic. They're
Mm-hmm.
that Mario brand, you know.
Mm-hmm. And then even slightly altering it, which
Mhm.
I think they did do with some of the sounds in Wonder. It worked,
Yeah.
and it gave it a new vibe while not
Mhm.
taking away from the past at all. So yeah, I think it's a great nominee for this category. TJ, you reviewed Alan Wake 2, right?
Yeah,
Can you talk about the sound design?
yeah. Like I think that in general, every time that you're dealing with the Taken, there's a very eerie sense of like listening before you even see them coming. Like you'll be walking when you're playing as Alan, you'll be walking and there will be a lot of different shadows around you, and some of them could be taken in disguise, and some of them could just be shadows. But oftentimes you hear them like whispering as you walk among them, like in like Sam and I, every time we start up the game, like Sam will just be like, "Wake, Alan, wake," because that's like one that you hear out of all of that so often, and it's just like it's creepy.
Yeah.
It's when you're walking among these things, you never know which one of them is going to come at you and attack you. Just hearing them whispering and maliciously around you is unsettling.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then there's just like the way that they used uh like flashbacks and like memories and these little cutscenes that are in the world as you're going, like overlaying dialogue over the and performances over the world as you're wandering through it. That's part of visual design, but I think they do a great job of like making their voices seem like ghostly and ghastly and like whispers of the past, like playing out before you. It's pretty incredible how well they put together an immersive horrorscape of noise in that game. And then there's like the complete opposite of that spectrum where you have like a full on concert event happen in the game at one point. And it's just colorful, bright, cheerful, dramatic, ridiculous, and completely unexpected. They weren't afraid to just like break their own rules as they went. Like where you're at one point you're just terrified, and then at another point like this is freaking awesome. What is happening?
It's a franchise where breaking the fourth wall is like part of the culture of it, and they did it in spades in Alan Wake 2, and I think audio design's a large part of that. I do like what you said about the first part with the whispers and stuff. Definitely harken back for me to like Hellblade, which I think has the creepiest whispers and the audio design maybe ever in a game.
Yeah,
But
there's
yeah,
definitely levels to that version. I feel like in the game throughout, and it's definitely helped largely by sound design. You
mhm.
know, like even when you're in smaller spaces, I feel like there's a you can kind of just hear like the creaks and stuff like that in different rooms.
When you go after like a boss character in that game and you're like chasing after them and you hear their voice like around corners or deeper within like the layer that you're exploring, it's like you know you're getting closer and there's a building sense of dread of when you're finally going to see them or when they're going to finally come out and attack you.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
reminds me more of the cinematic stuff like Seven, and some of
Yeah.
the Mindhunter and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sound effects in a horror game definitely super important. Glad it's on par with Alan Wake 2.
Yeah. It's you can't stress how important audio design is to making a horror game feel immersive and also terrifying. And it's this balance, right, of silence and noise, which kind of leads me to this next nominee, The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom, which I am still actively reviewing for Shacknews. This game balances silence and noise very well. Not as well as Breath of the Wild, probably, because Hyrule is certainly busier in Tears of the Kingdom. But yeah, this game definitely has some great audio design.
Less is
I'm
more,
curious-
which is like that's the saying I'd use for it.
It's the absence of sound at times is as important as having sound, I think. But it's also, there. I think it should be nominated, but I think there's other games in this category that probably do it better. There are things in Tears of the Kingdom I think stick out more than the audio design to me.
I love the audio design in this game. I don't think it'll get my vote, but I love a lot of the new sounds, like when you are like I can't remember what it's called, but phasing through like a
Ascend.
surface. Yeah, the ascend, like that kind of like
Yep.
it's really satisfying. I talked about this in another category, but when you dive into a body of water and there's that like light rain coming down from the water you displaced. I love that. I also love, I can't remember what they're called. They're basically like the glowing robot things that help you like recharge your batteries and just
Constructs.
moving around. The constructs. It's just that like kind of like it's almost like a jingle and a clink of just how they kind of move, how the parts
Mhm.
of them move. Like I can get really hypnotized by sound design in a game, and I will go up to them and just watch them move and listen to them move as well. I just really like it.
You're right, though. It's these things that you don't even.
Yeah.
You have to play it multiple times to even notice them because they're just kind of. You just accept them as part of the world, right?
Yeah.
And but yeah, Nintendo has a lot of little details in the game like that.
Yeah, like one of the ones like they iterate upon their history so much with stuff like the confirmation noise on the on the Purapad, when you do anything there, it's a sped up version of the do 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 from the old games when there's an item in a room.
Yeah. But it's like all bells and really fast. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like really smart the way they take some of their history and just integrate it into that sound design.
Mm-hmm. Also, it's important to note, like, you can fuse things to your weapon. The way that they used audio to really make you feel like, okay, this is a stone hammer, this is a sword, this sword has electric power. I threw a sapphire on this weapon and now it's shooting water out. A lot of that stuff people take for granted, but yeah, there's little details in all over Tears of the Kingdom's audio design that just make it a better experience overall. And it's almost, you have to be looking for it, but once you start doing that, you're like, wow, there is a lot of really detailed audio design in this game. But I think people take it for granted because it's like, oh, that's just an NPC, right? Those constructs, David, right? Like a lot of them are NPCs, but that noise, like, I know exactly what you're talking about, right? And I think that's a sign of good design for sure.
If there was a white noise machine that had the Zelda fan noise built into it, I could probably fall asleep to that.
Yep. And yeah, you're right. Like all the different things that you use in Ultra Hand, even that snap when you put something together with Ultra Build, like all those noises contribute to the experience. So, yeah.
There's also that I love it when games give you a sound effect to signify that you've won a fight. Like in Dark Souls, it's that like you hear that you're like, okay, the fight's over. And in Tears and Breath of the Wild, especially when the weapon breaks, it's like that. Like it's
Yep.
very satisfying to hear, especially when you throw it and hit them dead on, because you also get that bing of a critical hit to knock them down.
Yeah.
It's just this like it's almost a symphony of sound effects all working in concert to let you know that a bunch of cool stuff just happened. You know,
Gears as a franchise was one of the first ones to do that noise to indicate that the battle was over really well. It was subtle, right? It wasn't like the victory theme in a Final Fantasy game,
or like the death cry in like Doom and FPS games,
Yeah.
right? Like it was a sound effect rather than a Foley sort of thing.
Yeah, I think the subtleness of it in Tears of the Kingdom is pretty solid. And yeah, they really did. They nailed the sound design in the air. It feels like you're flying.
Yeah.
The wind, everything that happens in the air. The audio cue when one of those flying enemies sees you and is coming at you, right? Similar to how the Guardians had an audio cue in Breath of the Wild. Yeah, there's a lot. The longer I think about it, I'm starting to talk myself into voting for this game because it is really damn good.
It's a strong contender for sure.
But let's move on to another contender, Starfield. I know, Donovan, you reviewed it. Bill, you were playing it intensely for guide purposes, but also enjoying the hell out of it. Which one of you would like to speak to this? Bill, go for it.
I'll be quick, and if Donovan wants to add anything, but for me, it's the sound in Starfield really shines in space.
Mhm.
And the one thing that I've always heard Bethesda say, but I feel like they back it up, is that their worlds are about details. And that comes through with the sound here as well. The detail of the sound, especially in space, like an airlock clicking together and just the way that it actually like snaps and you hear it, and the way that like space, there really is no sound, right? Obviously that's different in a ship, but the way that they use sound is subtle. It's not overdone, but it's extremely impactful, and it feels like you're actually connecting with an airlock, or it feels like you're actually opening a hatch. If you're using your boost pack, not a jet pack, just the sound of it, like basically propelling you through the air. I thought the sound was good throughout the entire game, but it really shines like when there's a lack of other sounds around, and that happens a lot in space. And just with the way that they craft that experience of transitioning, like even getting into the cockpit of your ship and just hearing like the seat sliding forward and clicking into place and like pulling down on your console and things like that, the way that the button sounds when you press them, like everything about it is just really delightful on that sense.
Yeah, the sounds of the ship are great. Like even just the echo of your footsteps clanking on the floor, walking around, climbing up and down a ladder. I think the engines, the various engines, like when you allocate all your resources to your engine and you're flying and you see the engine light up and it just starts to roar is an awesome sound. Or when you do any of the, I forget what the game calls them, but like the hyper jump equivalent to other systems, those sounds are always very well done. Yeah, it is one of the things Bethesda got really right with that game is the identity of that universe, and I think sound is a big part of it.
Awesome. A worthy nominee for sure. And Greg, I believe you feel pretty strongly about this nominee, so I figured I'd give you the floor to talk Darkest Dungeon 2's audio design.
No, absolutely. Like, so they're like all these games are great games. And with section of Zelda, who doesn't use a ton of music, like I've never turned music off. It's very rarely that I turn music off in a game to enjoy the sound effects, because I have to be like, wait, what was that? Like, and that's not a knock on the music. That's just like I'm hearing these really interesting sounds. And someone who's worked in post production for over 16 years, and even people, if you are moviegoers, you've heard the hawk, you've heard the bear, you've heard these samples that have been used for decades, generations even. And and I can usually pick some out. You know, Starfield's a good example. Like I can pick, like I hear Fallout sound effects they used in Fallout, right? I can hear those things before, which is not a bad thing because they're good samples. Why re-record something that works? But in Darkest Dungeon 2, they did use samples, it was so hard to tell because they had been modded in such a way that they seemed completely unique. And I think in a turn-based game where you have things like knives twirling, like I think that's like one of the hardest sound effects to get down. It's the sound of a sword or a knife slicing through air and have it sound like it has weight or like a good feeling to it. They nail that. Stuff like rummaging through like a bag of potions, which basically sounds like a bag of marbles. Like I don't know if they did 100% Foley for this and they actually or they just are really good at remixing samples, but everything about the hits, the sound effects, everything has so much weight and texture to it in a game that I haven't heard that much texture and weight in a video game of sound in decades. I mean, I'm talking like a stone scraped on metal as it drags, shield hits, knife twirling, everything. It's just so well done. Like it was hard not to just turn off the music and enjoy it for what it was. And I marked it in our Slack if you guys want to hear some of the sound effects, and like all of them are just so well done. And all of them sound original, and I don't know if they all are, but like they that's a big accomplishment for a team that's not as big as other games out there. And it was worth noting. Like the people who did it, Power Up Audio, they did such a phenomenal job on making each class feel and sound unique. Each hit have weight. Each enemy have like interesting moans and grunts, and just it was just this plethora of sound effects that just added up to me just leaving the music off when I play it. I just turn it off, and I just want to hear the sound effects of the wagon rolling down the road, or when it hits an object, or the narrator, and all that good stuff. It was absolutely a unique sound experience in games that I haven't seen in a long time.
I didn't bring it up with Tears of the Kingdom, but like, because so much of what I like about the sound design involves the music. Like, after falling out of the sky, right, when you land on the ground, there's like those 2 bars of piano that play. There's like, dun-dun-dun. It's like very slight musical interludes that let you know you've gone from the Sky Island to Hyrule's ground, and then also when you land in the depths, you have that one whomp, right? That one bass whomp that hits you. So I didn't know if that was music design or audio design. Honestly, it kind of is both. But yeah, Darkest Dungeon 2 is a worthy nominee here. We got one more that we want to talk about, and that is Marvel's Spider-Man 2. Donovan, you reviewed this. You gave it a 10 out of 10 here at Shacknews. Talk about
I
the
did.
audio design a little.
Yeah, the sound in Spider-Man 2 is pretty superb. I think the easiest one to play out is like the sounds of the web thwips, right? Whenever Miles or Peter use their abilities, they had to have like recorded 1,000 audio files for all the different way webs can sound when they hit concrete and metal and somebody's face. They all have cool different sounds. Even though like different gadgets he has have their own little distinct sound effects. But even like when you're swinging and the way that like you can hear the wind kind of
Yep.
on either side of you when you're swinging really fast or you're going through like a wind tunnel on the web
Web
wings.
wings. Yeah.
Yeah. The sound is great there. Or even like they brought this back again. It's one of the coolest things they do in these modern Spider-Man games where like all the voice lines for the phone calls are like recorded twice. So they have a version where if you're just like standing there or walking, they're speaking in normal tones. But if Peter or Miles are like swinging while on the phone with somebody, they're yelling their lines and they sound really tired and exhausted. And people will comment on it. They'll be like, "Where are you at? What are you doing?" They're like, "Oh, I'm going for a run," which is like just the
That's
coolest
cool.
detail ever.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love it. Uh,
I agree, and I also think the enemies have some outstanding audio cues. Like some of the boss battles feature amazing sound. Yeah,
mhm.
it,
Oh yeah.
that game is. Uh, I think it's just kind of outstanding. The
Yep.
some of the things they do there, and audio is a huge part of it. I agree with the web wings thing, like entirely.
Mhm.
That because we just got the Miles Morales game what like 3 years ago. I don't think that the wind sounds were comparable in that game to this. So that was like one of those things where, yes, this game has been about flying through the air for years now, but it's better. It sounds way better this year
Mhm.
than ever
Yeah.
before.
Even narratively, like sound has such an emphasis this year because obviously Spider-Man 2 introduces Venom and the symbiote. And if you know it's Spider-Man lore, you know that like sound is the weakness. So that's like a whole like story point where they discover that, and there are scenes where you have to like make sounds and you're looking at the audio waves being like illustrated in the sky.
I love that
Um
Miles is an audio engineer. Like
yeah,
Miles Morales is literally an aspiring audio engineer and a DJ or whatever, but like there's that mission where you have to go it really as someone who loves sampling things and making music, like seeing Miles like have to go out there and actively sample stuff so him and Pete can make a weapon
yeah.
to fight Venom. I love stuff like that. And yeah, the also like the sound that they use when you go into like the hunter blinds or those places where your uncle has stashed gear, the audio cues they use with your whatever spider detective device you have is all that stuff is great. All of it increases the immersion, and
Mhm.
yeah, it's outstanding. That game's really good. All these games are awesome, by the way. Every single one that was nominated in this category. You should try them out if you haven't. But yeah, does anyone else have anything they want to add to any of these before we vote? David, go for it.
I'm not going to vote for this. It's not a nominee, but I can't remember who made me think of it. The tread of RoboCop as you're walking around in RoboCop Rogue City is so great. It reminds me of being a big daddy in BioShock 2.
Yeah,
But I also love when you sprint because I just imagine this like citizen stop. Citizen, you stop right now as you're treading like faster and faster. It's just really funny to me, but also just you feel powerful. I just wanted to give it a shout out real quick.
okay, cool. I'll allow it. Yeah, let's get to voting. I'm gonna start with Steve.
Tough. I'm torn between Zelda and Mario. Again, that will shock no one. Um, but I mean, I don't know. I think I'm gonna give it to Zelda for this one.
You know, I've been thinking about this, Steve. As a longtime viewer of the Steve Tendo show, you got snubbed this year, man. You could have been the voice of Mario in a movie, or
I
the new
know.
voice. You could have been the new voice of Mario for Wonder. So it's like I understand why you're not voting for Wonder here, man. Nintendo kind of did you
No,
dirty.
I'm going probably with that in music. I was gonna say
Yeah.
a lot on the
Hmm.
music
Yeah.
because there's a whole lot to say in the music, but
Oh, for
I
sure.
will go. I will go with Zelda for the sound.
But I'm just letting the folks at home know that if they're gonna make a Mario movie too, this guy.
I mean, I got snubbed for content creator of the
To
year
me,
too,
Mario.
but you know,
That's true. Between Donovan not
Yeah.
being inducted into the future class again and Steve isn't content creator of the year, we snubs all over the place. Okay, Bill. I've already derailed our vote, but Bill, go for it.
You know what? There was a very good argument made, and it was very effective. And I'm going to go with Tears of the Kingdom.
Okay. TJ.
I was ready to go with Alan Wake, but man, the more I think about Zelda sounds, the more I like them and the more they make me happy. just in every way, all throughout that game. So good. It's really hard to not give this to a horror game that uses sound so well. I think I have to go with Zelda though. It's a freaking amazing soundscape.
Mm-hmm. It's also just so much stuff.
Mhm.
Like, it's the sheer, like, I'm gonna sound like a broken record in other categories for this, but Zelda just does more than most other games this year. There's a lot going on. Not all of it is loved by everyone, but the sound components of it are all excellent.
There was a moment you talked about earlier that was like the sound of like when you hit something with a hammer.
Mhm.
And I just thought, like, when I break rocks in that game and you hear like that sort of pebbly, cobblestoney, falling over itself noise, there's something really satisfying about that.
Conversely, you know, there's these missions for the goddess statues where you have to you have to take a claw off of a dragon, basically. The sound, I did this flying over Death Mountain on the north side of Hyrule, right? The sound of me chasing this stupid claw as it falls off the mountain into the abyss will haunt me forever. Because that's excellent audio design there, too. You hear the claw hit the ground as it's rolling, and you're like, no! And here's just complete aside. You have to wait till the next blood moon to try again. So that's really, really annoying when it happens. But yeah, the audio in that game is excellent. Greg, sticking with Darkest Dungeon 2?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll hold off my vote for now. Donovan?
Someone should make Tears of the Kingdom ASMR. I'm voting for that game.
That's the most Zoomer shit you've said in a long time.
I just wonder like how much of it. I mean, it doesn't matter. I'm just curious, like how much of they reused from the first game brought directly over because it was a
Who
much
cares?
shorter. I think it matters. Like, if you make
But if it was good, like, I don't know, you said...
samples,
We've said...
yeah.
Yeah, you've said samples before are being reused, so
Yeah.
it's not... Here's a spoiler about video game development. They reuse
They reuse
assets
stuff
all the time.
Yeah.
Like, it's actually efficient to do that. So, no, I get it. I get what you're saying, Greg, but, like, we listed a lot of new sounds, right? Like, the depths weren't in Breath of the Wild.
Mhm.
The audio that you experienced there did not exist. That what David's talking about with the way you interact with water in Tears of the Kingdom, that wasn't in Breath of the Wild. So those are at least two examples of new audio experiences in the game. But there's a lot more. Because fusing things to weapons creates this whole just universe of sound that they had to create that wasn't in Breath of the Wild at all. But yeah. So yeah, Donovan, you voted, right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Tears of the Kingdom.
David.
Nothing against Tears of the Kingdom. I didn't mean to help talk anybody into it because I was going to go Alan Wake too, but I might have talked myself into Tears of the Kingdom as well. So Zelda, yeah.
That's funny. It's funny how that works sometimes. Denny.
You know what? I'm still gonna show some love to Alan Wake to you because I love me some immersive horror, and the soundscape in that game definitely had me checking around inside my house. So I will show it some love.
Yeah, good horror games require, or good suspenseful games require good audio design, and Alan Wake 2 has that. So yeah, I'm kind of surprised with how things are turning out here, honestly. But you know, that's why we do the Shacknews Awards deliberations, isn't it? Okay, so
Zelda
let's get
gets a
these.
sweep? No. What?
Yeah, not a sweep. Okay, Ozzy picked Spider-Man, and Sam picked Alan Wake 2.
So the votes don't matter. That's 2 votes.
So yeah, my vote does not matter. So we have 5 votes for Tears of the Kingdom, 1 for Darkest Dungeon, 1 for Spider-Man, 2 for Alan Wake. Yeah. I don't even know. I it does feel like we all talked ourselves into Tears of the Kingdom here. So I'll vote for Tears of the Kingdom,
Not
but
all, but most.
I'm just saying, like, I don't think
Is
any.
anyone changing their votes here? What you're talking like?
No.
Gonna shift over.
I've oscillated 3 times. I was Zelda, then Alan Wake 2, and then back to Zelda. But I'm gonna show Alan Wake some love in other categories. So
Yeah,
That's
and
fair.
I'm gonna show Mario Wonder some love in other categories
yeah,
because I do think that game has excellent sound design too. It's all these games are really good. Every it's gonna be a refrain from probably the rest of these deliberations. These games are all very good. So like every single sound team deserves praise for being nominated in this category. Donovan mentioned it earlier. Like this is a stacked year for video game releases. But yeah, Zelda, The Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom has won the Shacknews Award for Best Sound Design of the Year 2023.
You are our final hope.